Good morning and welcome back to the Breakfast Show 2. We're here with Derieck Hodges to talk all about the finances for the new year. So what would you say would be the most important thing we need to know as we head into the new year when we talk about our finances?
You know, I always come back to goals.
Yeah.
I think have a destination out in the future that you're shooting for. So even if that's a 90-day goal, I think if you said, hey, I'm trying to build up my cash reserves, so if the car breaks down, that's a goal.
Right.
And so I think having a real specific goal with a specific date, a specific dollar amount, that helps us make good financial decisions. It aligns our daily activities to something bigger.
And so I feel like, for me personally, and probably other people out there, saving is probably something that more people want to do. They just want to make sure that they have that emergency fund, or they have a little bit of wiggle room if it comes down to a month where their tire blows out and they need to get a new tire. What is the best method of saving money? Is it, taking a couple dollars out every day and putting it away? How do we do that?
Yeah. So, I think a couple things. Oftentimes I'll get asked questions, hey, my employer has a retirement plan and they match. Should I do that? And if you didn't have an emergency fund, I'd say, no, even though you're going to get free money from your employer, that's not the right kind of money.
Yeah.
So those emergency funds need to be liquid, they need to be available. And so definitely start there and look for any kind of mechanized way to do that. So if I could do payroll deduction into a savings account, excellent way to do that. If I can't do that, I'm going to try to find a way that when I get paid, I immediately have money debited out of my checking account and get it over into a money market or some kind of savings account. So it takes my thinking out of it, because if we stop and slow down, we think of reasons not to move money and do that. We really want to automate a lot of this.
And I know, the holidays just passed. We're spending a lot of money on Christmas presents and gifts, and people may end up using credit cards for that. How do we get out of credit card debt when you have a lot of credit card debt?
Yeah. Well, you got to start right now and say, this is the day, and I'm going to move away from that. And so Dave Ramsey, kind of the famed financial advisor, I think he's on to it. He's, this whole debt snowball idea of, you get all your debts, you align them and start with the lowest balance and then attack it. I like it because it really gets us intentional. It gets us focused. And that's usually what gets us into trouble, is lack of focus. And so I think that's what you got to do, is you just have to say, this is my day, I'm going to change my behavior. And then, he goes on and talks about an envelope system of going back to cash. And there's some real value in that. I like that thinking, because what it does is physical money tends to get spent differently than a credit card does. If we slow our decision making down, that's usually where we're going to make better choices. So I often times will tell people, kind of have a rule of any big purchase, you got to take so much time before you make that decision. And then try not to make, if you're in a relationship, try not to make a decision solo, get your team member involved in it.
Right. And you say that, physical cash, I feel like it's so much harder to spend that, because I don't know if it's just that cash it's not a thing much anymore. We have our debit card and we have our credit cards, but just swiping a card just seems so easy. But I always like to keep that cash in my pocket. I don't know. Maybe we all should go back to cash and we wouldn't spend as much money.
Well, it's interesting. And I think, this advice might be even a bit dated, because I think you're right. We probably are moving away from it. And certainly through COVID, there was even lots of discussion of we need to get rid of paper currency. But until that day comes, if we're struggling with budgeting, it really is an effective way to kind of get control of it. But you can do it electronically. It's really about sitting down and evaluating your spending on a regular basis, and then making value judgments of, was that my best decision? And I'm not a big believer in, let's not beat ourselves up about past behavior, but let's learn from that behavior and say, if I had it to do over, would I do the same thing? And if not, what can I do in the future?
Most definitely. And as we head into the new year, I feel like people start to think about different things that they may be spending bigger money on, more money, like home projects. Maybe they have to buy a new car. Maybe they're buying a house. Is it wise to save up for those things prior to doing it? Or what are your thoughts on when we're, planning to buy a bigger priced item?
Yeah, that's, I think it's a good question anytime. It's a great question today because of inflation.
Yes.
Inflation, interest rates being high. Everyone's going to have to tackle this kind of on their own terms.
Yeah.
But I like where you're going with that. I think the more that we can kind of have a great idea of what we want to do, and the more we accumulate in cash is probably a good idea, because it's going to do a couple things. Number one, it's going to delay it a little bit, and maybe that helps bring down inflation a little bit more. So maybe all these building materials will get a little less expensive. Maybe interest rates will eventually start to pivot the other direction. So, and then ultimately maybe you just pay cash. That would be a great goal too.
Right. Well, those are all such great tips and advice from Derrick. We always appreciate him coming out. Hopefully you guys head into the new year a little bit more financially stable, or whatever it may be. Our finances always matter as we head into the new year, or just any day for that fact. We'll be right back in a little bit.